Hi, I'm Chris Haigh and this is the Fiddle channel, and today we're going to play Merle Haggard's Big City. Big City was a request for John, one of my supporters on Patreon. This was a 1982 song by Merle Haggard, and it was his 27th #1 single. There's a remarkable story about the writing of this song, which I'll come to a bit later on. But I'm going to give you the introduction, which is probably the most challenging thing about the song. We're going to look at the melody, the chords, and how to do a solo on this piece. When John asked me to look at this piece, he'd been trying to play the intro, which when I listened is some fairly tricky double stopped fiddle all the way through the intro. And when I looked at some videos, I realized that when he does this live, or did this live, he actually had two fiddle players, one playing the top line, one playing the bottom line. It is possible to play as one fiddle, and whether it was originally designed that way or designed with two fiddles, I really don't know. If anyone can tell me, I'd be very pleased to find out. But anyway, so I'm going to give you the tricky version, and I do suggest if there are any bits of this that are too hard, simply simplify it, just leave some of the double stop bits out. You've just heard on the intro me playing that, so I'm going to do it now really slowly. So we're starting off with 1/3, going to 2/4, going to open over 1. So, and it's very common with these kind of intros that the first two notes, or possibly the second two of the first three notes, will be a kind of a a chop. And this is the case with this one, and it's far better to do two downs than it is a down and an up. So in fact I'm going to do 3 downs, and then we've got 1/3, open over 2, and then 3/1, which is impossible. So third position, 1/3. Now this is an unusual 1/3 because the third, that note, is a G sharp, and I have very rarely, if ever, done this particular move before. So that is something you need to practice over and over again to get that, unless you are a lot luckier than me. Okay, so just up to there. That's the first phrase. Then open over 1 with a little flick of the second finger. Open over 1, 1/3. Then 1/2, open over 1, 4/2, 1/3, 1/2. So I'll just do that again. Now, you may find coming down that 1/3 and then 1/3 is easier than 4/2, 1/3. I'm in two minds about that. So let's take it up to there from the beginning. Three, open over 1 with a little flick of the second finger, and then on the intro, on the original, the pedal steel takes over. So we're going to copy that pedal steel line, but with an easier fiddle harmony, and the harmony would be what I call the scale of sixths, which is the melody on the top and the finger below, on the string below, following it up a sixth below. Which is a really easy way to do harmonies. 1, 2. Okay, now with the harmony, following with the string below, finger below. So, that's the intro. I'm just going to try it again, and this time with the backing. So, as I said, there's no shame in in not succeeding with this intro. So do simplify it to whatever you need to do to make this work, because it's not a question of playing it like this or not playing it at all. You can simplify it as much as you like. Okay, now let's look at the verse, which is an interesting verse, and we'll come to why it's so interesting in a minute. So to start with, I'm just going to play through the vocal melody, more or less as sung, but with a few extra notes just to emphasize the chord changes. Okay, so that's the verse, and when you hear it like that, it sounds a bit random, to say the least. The phrasing is odd, and the reason for that is that the phrasing is absolutely following the vocal line, and the vocal line is absolutely following a certain conversation that Merle Haggard had. So he was finishing up his album with his band in Los Angeles, and just as they were about to finish, he nipped out and had a conversation with his tour bus driver, whose name was Dean Holloway. So he asked Dean, how are you getting on, you know, how's life? And Dean Holloway was more than a bit fed up, and he said, I'm tired of this dirty old city. And rambled on like that, and Merle Haggard asked him, so where would you like to go? What would you like to do? And he said he'd like to go someplace in Montana. And Merle Haggard was so struck by this conversation, he immediately wrote some of it down, some of the exact phrases that he'd used. And in no time at all, and I think it is literally within like half an hour, he'd written this song, went back into the studio and recorded it with the band. With an unusual amount of fairness for a songwriter, he gave half of the credit for the song to his coach driver, because he'd given him those key phrases. And that credit on the song apparently amounted to around $500,000 worth, which is quite something. So that's why we have these odd phrases such as I'm tired of this dirty old city and somewhere in the middle of Montana. So those phrases are kind of wedged in there, and whereas a normal songwriter would have squeezed the words to fit the natural phrasing of the song, he did it the other way around. So what to do as backing for this? The way we're going to try doing this is playing long notes, either single notes or paired notes, preferably, for the chords. So for E, for example, then to A. And I'm also going to try and tie the chords together, so at the end of each chord, I'm going to move towards the next chord. That kind of ties them together. It also fills a space which often happens at the end of a vocal phrase. So let's try all the way through doing that. And notice I was tripped up by that last phrase at the end. Big city, turn me loose, set me free. And it really is useful actually to learn these lyrics, to understand how these phrases are supposed to work. So that's one approach, long notes with little fills. And I did a video called Joined Up Country, which explains this in a lot more detail. It's a thing that works really well over Hank Williams songs. And you also need a good understanding of two-note chord shapes, and I have another video on that. Now, the rhythm of this song is a very particular thing. It's called sometimes the honky-tonk shuffle, sometimes the Ray Price beat. And Ray Price introduced this in 1956 with his song Crazy Arms. And as I understand it, this rhythm hadn't been used before. So it's a walking bass, bum 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 bum, and the guitar going dum 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 dum. So if you want to play rhythm on the fiddle, then that's quite a good approach. That's kind of using chops when you're going down dead and hearing the chord as it comes off. But you could just do just down without a chop, and I think that's less effective. You could go on the beat like that, but I think the best rhythm is, and chopping is a whole thing into itself, and yet again I have a video on that. And this, if you want to play backing, is a really good technique to use. So, if it comes to a solo, I think this song defies a solo. You really would be hard pressed to follow the rhythm and phrasing of this song to do a solo over verse or chorus. So I think you would maybe just play this intro again as a solo. Or play an improvised solo over the intro. That's one possibility. Let me just have a little go at improvising a solo over the intro. So it works apart from the fact that the last two bars, it wants to extend a bit. So yeah, this is like the first half of the verse, but not quite finished. So I think that's what I would do. I would straighten out the verse and make that into a solo. But anyway, there's plenty to work on here. If you would like the copy of the sheet music, do subscribe to the channel and send me an email. I will send you a PDF of this music. If you would like to help keep these videos coming, do please consider joining me on Patreon, where you can get hold of all of my PDFs and at certain levels all of my backing tracks and lots of other goodies besides. And if anyone, as a result of watching this video, actually learns and is able to perform the intro, I'd be delighted to see how you get on with it. because I've certainly found it a struggle. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you again soon.